Hello, my name is Chris Snipes, and you are listening to The Melt. Now, more than ever, it is important to cultivate a childlike sense of wonder and possibility. The polarization that seems to be amping up has many becoming more rigid and less open to new ideas and ways of perceiving and being. And by childlike, I don't mean naive and immature, but rather more like beginner's mind, an awareness that is able to perceive without the template of preconceived notions or judgments arising from past experiences. It is often these obscurations that cause us to lose touch with our intuition. Intuition, as today's guest Danny Blitz posits in her new documentary series entitled Superpower, is a frequency that one can tune into that connects us to the greater grid of existence. The art of listening to one's gut is one that can help us make tough decisions, bring us closer to what we need, and keep us away from that which is harmful. For this 10-episode series, Danny interviews the likes of Dean Radin and Jude Currivan, both whom I've had on The Melt before, Dr. Joe Gallenberger, who I will be interviewing soon for an upcoming Melt episode, and Dr. Julia Mossbridge and Dr. Bruce Lipton, whom I hope to interview someday for some future episode, amongst many others. I start the conversation by asking Danny if she was always drawn to the sorts of things discussed in the Superpower series.
I would say that all my life I've definitely been connected to the inner power without even realizing what it was, without even realizing what I was doing and that I was even doing anything, or even realizing that I could control anything. So when I remember as a very young babe, barely walking, remembering being born and going over and over that whole scenario of being in the mother's womb and being born, and I remember the day as a young toddler playing in the sprinklers in our backyard, and the neighbor boy playing in the sprinklers with us, and me saying, well, I remember when I was born. And he said, oh, no, you can't. Nobody remembers when they were born. That's not possible. And after that, I promptly forgot. But I remember,
Wow.
It's just, and in our film, we talk about the children and how when we were filming, we were told very explicitly, you cannot bring in any kind of skepticism. You cannot. And the crew, I had to trust my crew. We talked about it. And I invited them that if there's any kind of creeping into the picture, then they can kindly excuse themselves. We will be happy to stop filming. Maybe somebody else can take over. So because I know firsthand what that is like. So, go ahead.
We directly, I mean, obviously we're all interconnected, but we really do affect each other just by the vibe that we're giving off, even if it's not something that we're saying, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. Like you can meet somebody and and really pick up a lot of things about that person. And sometimes, mostly, well, especially if you don't know them, you're not necessarily going to know how accurate you were, but you can certainly sense into what's going on in their life. And if they were open enough to, where you could confront a perfect stranger and say, whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
And they would be honest with you, I think we would all be kind of amazed. But I think what stops people is that they're afraid of their own feelings. They're afraid of what's really going on. And for some stranger to just come out, even somebody, an acquaintance, to just come out and start, pulling that apart could be very, very scary.
Yeah, I mean that says something about be careful about who you tell your good news to, or your plans that you're excited about too, because that person could have an effect on that in the sense that they could just bring it down to a different frequency without necessarily you wanting that. I didn't used to think that was possible, but I totally believe in it now.
Yeah, I get excited a lot about many things, and I express freely that excitement. And what you're saying is true. If that is not reciprocated in some way, even if somebody were to just acknowledge with a logical left brain about how cool that is, if I could get that much, but oftentimes my excitement is quelled because of the energy of the other person, for whatever reason, there's no judgment on my end about what's going on. It's like, hey, you didn't get excited when I got excited. It's not about that. It's just more, okay, moving on.
Exactly. And there are those friends or acquaintances or people that you have to be around to work with or whatever that you always have a good idea just by experience of which one of their templates they're going to put on whatever it is that you're offering, what you're bringing to the table. Because people do that. It's disappointing sometimes how many people do that. When you give them something that just seems to be like this bright, shining gem of information or a little sliver of experience or something like that, they can kind of just like throw a blanket over it just by the way that they view the world. So they are not able to see that gem in the same way that you are. So they just kind of, maybe not being aware of it, they just kind of went, in their Eeyore sort of way, kind of shrug it off going, yeah, I guess that's cool.
Yeah, my editor and I had a good long discussion about that. And how, we kind of talked more about from the professional end about how I am, approachable and relaxed and calm and at ease. And you can tell me pretty much anything. I'm not going to, fire somebody because they made a mistake. It's like, let's talk about this. And they can feel free to come from a place of, real vulnerability to, in fact, I prefer it. It's like, all right, what's really going on here? Because I can handle that more than I can a facade.
Yes.
And people are used to facades because they feel like they have to do this. If you're in the professional world, this is a facade. I must be professional. I must do and say certain things in certain ways and react in certain ways.
Yes.
In fact, when I worked in the corporate world, I was kind of slapped on the hand for being so expressive. And of course, for a woman, they say, oh, you're emotional. And it's like,
yes.
Actually, that's passion.
Yeah, exactly. Something that you've obviously lost along the way somewhere.
So, and that was hard for them to understand. What do you mean? That was, you had emotions, and they're right, because I am excited. That is a good emotion, to be excited about my work, don't you think? And that confused them. It's like, well, I don't let myself get excited like that. And it's, why not?
Exactly. Why tamper that down?
Yeah.
I think that people think that maturity has to mean that you have to be a fuddy-duddy and, have this sort of monotone, your lows aren't too low, your highs aren't too high. And that's what being an adult is about. But that's a load of hooey.
I think so. Can you imagine what this world would look like if we all just kind of, you have to harness it. You can't go crazy because somebody might think that you're going to like do something.
Explode.
But right, explode. That's a good option.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's more like, hey, let's let's not scare people, but let's express that excitement, because if they're getting excited, you get to be excited, and if you get to be excited, the people you're working with and for are going to get excited. Like everybody's now working on excitement all day long. How cool is that?
Yes, for sure. Because it can be infectious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Just like laughter.
For sure. Yeah. Or yawning.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
So it's interesting that the kid brought that up and you immediately forgot the experience of that. But obviously you remember, going back to when you were talking about remembering when you were born, obviously you remember having remembered that.
I do. And I vowed to never forget that. It's like, I may not relive the experience, the sound of the heartbeat and the sound of the fluids and the blood. And, I just remember all those details. I remember remembering, right? So, but I also remember being an energy light. And as I reflect, so like before I came into this human form.
Like preconception?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you say that, and I go, I right now am really starting to take a deep dive into OBEs, out of body experiences. And I wonder, from what I'm learning, if my understanding of that energy light preconception was actually an OBE when I was a child. Because I remember the energy light, the energy feeling, and the feeling of being so excited that I am entering my physical form now, and how exciting it was to be able to feel, to use all the senses in the way the physical form, receives them. And then I remember being, watering a plant in my bedroom and just stopping to take time to laugh and to clap and to sing and to hoot and to holler, because I was now expressing that excitement that my energy light. So now I'm thinking, wait a minute, that energy remembrance came when I was older. Was I actually having an out-of-body experience? And then the next thing I knew, there I was, really now enjoying what I was getting excited about before in the energy body. So there's that remembering as well.
Cool. Were you born into a family that was receptive to awarenesses like that? Well, there's an answer right there.
I did not talk about it. The neighbor boy really just, being extremely sensitive, he shut me up right away. So I might have expressed things with my mom, but I don't remember doing that. I do remember taking out some spoons right around the Uri Geller time when he was really coming out, bending spoons.
Yeah.
And so I remember my parents talking about that and how cool that was. And I thought, I could do that. So I pulled out some spoons and I put them on the dining room table, and I sat there and I really just focused on. Now, was a success? I don't remember being successful, but I do remember being, maybe 3 or 4 years old, and my mom she was just cleaning. She was in the other room, and I was sitting here working on bending spoons.
That's great.
And I did a lot of lucid dreaming. That I remember. That was a very conscious, easy thing. I remember just going to bed and going, okay, tonight we're going to talk, or we're going to do this. We're going to fly. I love to fly.
Mm-hmm.
And I love talking to the little people, little like 2-inch people. That's what I call them, the little people. And doing that regularly every night. It's like, oh, tonight, this is what we're going to do. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you still lucid dream?
I'm trying to get back to that. I'm really doing what I can as an adult to recultivate. I don't know if it was even cultivated then. It was just my natural, whatever I could do then that eventually were kind of cultivated out of me, which is the normal story, right, in our culture. But
yes.
I am trying to get back to that. I am, working out the blocks. It's like, what's blocking me? What's getting in my way? What's just coming up with some interesting things. Of course, I'm always asking Spirit, what do I need to do next? What's give me a sign. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, how do I work around that? So yeah, I'm working on it.
Yeah. I went through a period of lucid dreaming too, not when I was a child, but shortly after reading, of course, the Don Juan books and doing some of the techniques that were talked about in there, and was very successful. And I loved the flying dreams too. Those were absolutely amazing. I loved going into lucid dreams and doing things that the laws of physics, or at least the laws of physics that were told to me, are told to all of us, were constricting me from doing in the physical world. So, of course, flying was one of those, and that was a blast. But yeah, I've been trying to get into that too. It's hard for me for some reason, or has been, for me to wake up during my dreams. I'm so hypnotized by my dreams. I need to find a technique that works to break through to do that.
Yeah. And that's the thing. There are a lot of techniques out there. There are a lot of teachers. There's a lot of learning, but everybody's different.
Yes. And I think we're different at different points in our life too. Yeah. So moving on to the Superpower Series, docuseries that you made, and that is so excellent. How did you come from that awareness when you were a child to the point in your life where you felt it necessary, or you felt drawn to engaging in a project like this?
This was something, what I landed on was not something I started with. But what I did start with, the intention with that is the same intention for this film. And what motivated me has to do with, this is kind of a coming out story, so I'm a little nervous, but it's watching my daughter grow up and being very involved in her life, working in the classrooms with all the parents. It was a school where you were required to work in the classroom for so many hours a week, and have a role where you're, working on other things on behalf of the school or the class. And so we're very involved with our kids growing up, raising them, very in touch with all of that. And I watched these kids go through some really hard times based on, and I'll just put it out there, the mistakes I saw their parents making. And if I wanted to maintain friends, I could not give unsolicited advice. And it wasn't like I was coming from a place of all-knowing. I was just knowing when something, okay, that is not good. Like calling your daughter a fatso all the time. That's not right.
Yeah.
So it's not anything anybody could argue with. It's just, what are you doing? And watching friends take the advice of their allopathic doctors and their priests and, all the sources on the outside, and really making big mistakes with their kids, really making them sick. And they probably today disagree, because I think there's this denial about their choices, because they still make these choices to listen to everybody else outside of themselves to make the, quote, important decisions. And I'm thinking that's when you need to listen to yourself for those important decisions. And, you educate yourself, and then you filter, and then you use what feels right. And I saw these kids, God, committing suicide, cutting, mental health issues, lots of digestive dysfunction, and starting at a very early age, 7 years old, 8 years old.
Wow.
And whole entire classrooms being wiped out for a couple of weeks, including the teacher. They were sicker than I have ever seen, ever experienced while growing up. We never had that. Maybe one kid had come in with a runny nose and they didn't know how to take care of themselves, so they'd have it for 2 months. But everybody else, they might have gotten sick, but for a couple of days, it really wasn't, it was just part of life.
Sure.
And, but not like this. It was not like this. And I thought, what is going on? Other than all the environmental pollutants and the, medications and the shots and the, all of those pollutants, basically, outside, inside our bodies, the food we eat, all of that stuff. All of those can be made with internal decision making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We don't have to do what everybody else is doing. If we're worried about money because we can't afford organic, let's really connect on that. Let's okay, so either we pay now or we pay later. Your choice.
Exactly.
Because you're going to have to pay. So, your choice. If and then you sit with that. Are you okay with that? And I just saw them making the short-term decisions and following what the public is being told to do, that sort of thing. And instead of really just figuring out what they need to do with their child, with their family, with their circumstances. And with the result was a really mess. So we didn't get to blame anything like we're inner city, we're solo parents, we don't have a lot of money. All the things that are typically blamed, nobody got to blame any of that. They bragged about how highly educated they were, and they were. They had plenty of money where mom never had to work, dad or the father would stay home. Somebody got to stay home. And so, and mostly 2-parent households, whether they were mom and mom, dad and dad, didn't matter, 2-parent households. So, and still what was going on. So that I was tormented by it all while, I would cringe and I would go over in my mind, what is going on? I was trying to understand what is happening. And I drew my own conclusions, which is bottom line. I see them listening to the outside sources and not their internal sources. And I thought, okay, well, I didn't really get to help all those wonderful children that we know and loved. Some have passed on, some are still struggling. And I'm hoping that if I create a solution, that their children won't have to suffer.
I like it. Yeah, and you see that especially going on right now with the whole COVID situation, where, and our culture has just gradually been building up to this too, is where we just sit back and passively receive information from the quote unquote experts, which has totally gotten us out of contact with our, as this series is about, intuition, about our gut feeling about things, about what is right for this particular situation, thinking that we have to fit into some category or some under some specific umbrella when it doesn't work that way. But the society teaches us that we should all conform to it. And if the experts are saying this, then that's exactly what we should be doing, unquestioningly, which I think once you cut questioning out, then that's a huge handicap right there. Because critical thinking, I mean, that's That's important, and critical feeling, if there's such a thing, and or put it in those words before. But yeah, I know what you mean. People doing things because people tell them to do them, or because they feel that that's what's expected of them. And I think that does, yeah, a lot of people do go awry because of that and lead their kids awry.
Yeah. And these would be the first people who would say, I'm a critical thinker. I'm really good at critical thinking. And I love your phrase, critical feeling. Wow, love that. And I'm thinking, well, that's really where we need to go, is that critical feeling, which is like, let's dissect that. What exactly does that mean? But I know what you mean. And yeah, it's that was the other thing watching. Now, in my daughter's school, we did pick unusual schools. They were kind of, in fact, at one point, the school district was trying to do everything they could to turn it into a not so unusual school.
Uh-huh.
And because we were bucking the system. We were doing what we were not doing what we were told to do. And they really, really tried hard to get us all on board with, the testing and all of that stuff. And
yes.
And so part of that whole curriculum was to have the kids think on their own. Do not feed them information, ask them questions. And so, they were encouraged to do that. But the whole phrase critical thinking, that was almost absent. It's like it's like critical thinking 101 when I was a kid. And now do we even mention that? Like, do our kids even know what that is anymore?
Exactly. Really, it's insane and sad. It's like we're not teaching them how to think, or how to apprehend situations with their own faculties, but we're teaching them what to think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dangerous stuff.
It is.
There's go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, you brought up the episode about the children, or about children. And there is a scene in there, a situation where a bunch of them are wearing blindfolds, and they are doing some very, very astounding things. Could you lay out that scene for somebody who may not have seen your series and explain what exactly was going on there?
This was a demonstration of kind of a surface deep idea of what these kids can do. So they were demonstrating, we'll just set it up. They were demonstrating around a table, 3 girls and their higher consciousness teacher were doing various things with blindfolds on. And, if you look closely, because of course the critical eye is going to go, can they see out of the corner of those? It's like, well, really, really look, because as far as I could tell, they were not peeking. And I really would like to think, she's not teaching a generation to peek and cheat and lie. This is not what we're doing, folks. Come on. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So they were doing things like reading a book with the blindfolds on. And these are thick, they're the Mindfold blindfolds. So if you look it up, you can see, and maybe even people buy them because they want to test it for themselves. I would encourage them to do that and see how absolutely pitch dark it is inside. So they were reading a children's book with their blindfolds on. They passed it around the table. They were making jewelry, picking pieces that they thought would look beautiful, colorful and would match the other beads. They weren't just randomly picking stuff up and stringing them. They were going, they were being very choosy because they could see what they wanted to create, not, again, with their blindfolds on. We had a couple of scenes where they were throwing a big beach ball to each other they were standing up and throwing their beach ball to one another.
Wow. Yeah, that was very moving and incredible.
Yeah. And then another time they were, she had flashcards, and she just a very simple picture she would, bring up, and they're like, oh, I know what that is. They could see that. might have been a sun or a flower, and then they would draw it. So they would draw, and they were encouraged not to say it, although one girl's like, oh, that's just a flower. But they would, it didn't matter because the idea was that they would draw exactly what they saw. So even if she said a flower, there could have been different interpretations, and there weren't. They all drew the same flower.
It's amazing.
So yeah, and the idea, she made it very clear during the interview. This is not them using their pineal gland. It is not them using their third eye. It was very important for her for us to know that. And okay, so what were they using? There's a light, a pinpoint of consciousness of light that allows them, that illuminates what they're looking at. And she said that depending upon the individual, that illumination can come out of the side of their head. It can come out from above their head. It might come, like literally on top of their head so that it's floating. And that light of consciousness sees what they're looking at very clearly. And then they can do whatever it is that they need to do with that, what they're seeing. So I thought that was fascinating. I did not expect her to say, this is not the pineal gland. This is something different. Because of course we all assume, oh, that's the third eye. They're seeing out of their third eye. Well, we don't really know what that means, but of course that's where we're going to go. But yeah, for her to say, and so everybody's different. You could see one girl she would have her head tilted, and you could see it wasn't that she was trying to look out the side of her mask, because you could clearly see the way that she was looking, because that's where her light, her point of light was shining. So it wasn't necessarily on her face. It looked like it was almost on her temple. You could see, right next to her ear, maybe.
Wow.
So, yeah.
How long did you were you told when you were doing this part of the episode how long it took them to be trained to do that? Or was it a training, or was it something, it's more like standing out of their way?
It is a training. They are cultivating this ability in these children. She takes them for a number of weeks. They could go through a 6-week program, a 12-week program, whatever is needed. There's, there are interviews that are done, and she gets an idea of where these kids are. There are certain ages that she will take and she won't take. So 5 to 12. And, because after that, if they're 13, 14, now they're so used to using their left brain that they're really going to be wanting to use that more than just allowing their consciousness to develop, to just not have any kind of judgment about themselves, to not be critical about themselves, to not, bring all of that in to the picture and slow down their learning. It's a set number of weeks. And she wants to have the kids who are still in that open phase of their lives where they're willing to just try things without questioning. That was the other cool thing, is that she said, we do not ask our kids questions. We do not encourage questions from them, because as soon as you do, you go to the left hemisphere and you start thinking versus sensing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just really incredible to watch. Because it was obvious, as you said, looking at the whole scene, that there was nothing nefarious going on. Everybody was seeing from a totally different way than we are used to being based in our physical selves. It's amazing.
Yeah, and the moms came up. So the moms came in and they were talking about, we had 2 moms talk about their experiences, and one girl was very, very ill. She was in a wheelchair. She was so ill. She was having to, at a very young age, be carried back and forth to the restroom. And she wasn't going to school. And it was just, it felt like, she didn't say this, but to me, it felt like they were dying. They were on their way out. But she never said that. It was just a very bad case of, she calls it, ME, which is a very bad case of candida. And I personally know what that's like, and fortunately was healed and cured, but not 100%, because that never is. You always have to manage it. But her daughter Was. She said within 5 months after learning about the school and learning about working with Nicola Farmer, that her daughter no longer needed the wheelchair. She was done. Yeah. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Because she was vibrating at a higher frequency, to which, of course, is, now brings in the natural healing aspect when you're in that higher vibration. So, I can't go on and on about that, but that was what was implied, basically, because she didn't really get into the nitty gritty of how that happened. She was just saying, well, 1 minute my daughter was sick and 5 minutes later, she doesn't need the wheelchair. So it's like, because she went through this program, and it's not like it was an energy healing program. They were cultivating higher consciousness. That's it. And from that experience, she was healed.
Just another example of how much power our minds have. I don't know if you've ever read the book by, I believe his name is Michael Talbot, The Holographic Universe.
Yes.
And yeah, some amazing things in there, like talking about somebody with multiple personality disorder and how every time they would shift from one personality to another, one of those people could have diabetes and they would exhibit all the symptoms. Then they would shift to another, no symptoms whatsoever. We have an incredibly powerful tool at our disposal. And it's amazing when you just think of the potential of that. No wonder we're constantly being tried to dumb down because we would just not have any need for most of the power structures and BS that modern life affords us. We would be able to be much more self-sufficient and more omnipresent than we currently are. But I think we're moving in that direction.
We are, a lot of us are thinking positively like that, that's what we're doing. But you're right. A lot of industry we would no longer need because we just would have powers that we wouldn't need technology for.
Yeah.
And of course, this is going against the grain of the whole, theory of creating superhumans with AI technology and, transhumanism and all of that. And we're actually saying, guess what? We don't need that either. We just need to be who we are. And people need, and Julia Mossbridge talks about how scary that is. She talks about how frightening, once we realize what the possibilities are, how frightening it can be. So we probably scare ourselves when we when we look into even just a little bit, of what kind of power we could actually have. And I'm all about self-empowerment. As a young adult, I was about in self-empowerment and, feel extremely self-empowered to do the things that I've done in my life. And I want that for people. I want them to feel that power. And because when they feel that, guess what? They're not afraid anymore. And when they're not afraid, they don't make these silly decisions.
Yeah, exactly. To get off of their merry-go-rounds, the cycles that they keep reliving over and over and over again. Yeah, and that's important.
And a lot of people want that. They want to get off that merry-go-round. They're willing to acknowledge that's what they're on right now and are so afraid to do that.
It's scary. That's one of the reasons I think that people stay on the merry-go-round is because it's familiar. They know what to expect, even if it's a low expectation.
Yep. They're like, look, I've lived this long. I'm good. I can be good. And just let me live it out and be done with it already. And it's like, all right, well, in my middle age, I'd like to just do something a little different. So exactly. I'm going to go for it.
Mm-hmm. So the superpower that you are speaking of in the title of this is intuition, basically, right?
Yeah. So, and then what does that mean? Really, I'm using it very broadly. It's as an umbrella term, and I am following what my first official higher consciousness teacher, Dr. Julia Mossbridge, taught me, which is it's an umbrella. It's an umbrella that encompasses all kinds of, let's just say it, psychic abilities. So we use the word intuition because it's not as scary as psychic. And it's not as woo-woo sounding as psychic, even though that's really what it is. It's like, come on, folks. It's the same thing. We're talking about doing all kinds of things, and all of us have different abilities. So it's like, well, what's yours?
And childhood is very, very important for developing this intuition, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, what happens is we usually just stomp on it. In fact, I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today about this, about what happens with it. We don't treat our children with respect. We dishonor them right from the get-go. It's just super simple things. We're not even talking about cultivating intuition. We're just talking about the way we see our children, requiring them to do as I say, not as I do as you're told, shut up, sit down, listen to me, no, 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 all the time, no, 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 no. But parents, they're just doing what their parents, like they don't take the time to learn a different way of doing things. And so I knew with my daughter, I knew that I was a terror as a teenager. Not because I was bored, it was because I was disrespected. And I didn't know how to express my anger from that. And so I did things. And I get it when teenagers lash out and they're angry and they do things to themselves, to each other, to the community, to the school, defacing, whatever it is they do. I get it. And why did they get to that point? That is not how they were born. People aren't born angry for the most part. There could be some past life thing they're coming into life with, but for the most part, we're brought into this world. I think, where we're open and susceptible to whatever it is however we're being treated. And so when I did not want a terror as a teenager. So I knew right from the get-go, just coming from that perspective, it's like, I do not want to raise a girl who is going to terrorize me.
That's a good starting point.
So how do I start now? Like right when she's in my womb, how do I start now? And it's about respect. It's all I wanted as a kid was respect. I wanted to be heard. I wanted to be taken seriously. No matter how silly it might have been, it didn't matter. I just needed to be heard and seen and loved as I was. And that's what I did with her. So like a perfect example I love to bring up to people is she was just learning how to pull her body up onto a table. So she was getting that arm strength and pulling herself up so she could stand just before she started walking, right? That stage as a baby. And I had left scissors on the table that she pulled herself up to, and she grabbed the scissors. And of course, the first thing was to take them out of her hands immediately. She started crying, and I went, oh, okay, she's not coming from a place of danger because she doesn't know. She is coming from a place of A, being startled, and B, that's disrespect. I completely disrespected her desire to explore. I quashed that right away. I just nipped it in the bud because I knew potentially what it could mean. But she doesn't know that. And so I thought, oh, okay. So what I did is I took the blade and I went, ow, 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 like that to show her what was concerning me. Then I put the blade in my hand and I turned it around like you do when you pass scissors to anybody, hopefully. And, gave her the handle and I gave it right back to her. Here she is, less than 1 year old. She was at that point about 9 months old, and gave the scissors back to her. And she just looked at me. We just looked at each other and I held a gaze and just of this trust that I'm giving to her. And she realized that. understood the responsibility I was handing to her.
That's great.
Oh my God, it was so deep. And she looked at me and I looked at her and we held the gaze. And then she reached back out and she gave me the scissors back.
That's perfect.
And I said, thank you. And I didn't make a big deal about it. I just said, thank you, and looked at her in the eye and put the scissors away. And it was like that. We have to remember where they're at and honor them, respect them.
I wholeheartedly agree. What does, what does interconnection have to do with intuition?
Where'd you get that from? I'm trying to think of where you're coming from.
Pardon me. I'm trying to remember what part of what episode inspired me to write that, and I'm drawing a blank right at this moment.
Okay.
So just go with it. If nothing immediately pops in your head, we can move on to another question.
No, it's okay. So the idea is how we are all connected. That's the second episode. How we are all connected, that we're interconnected, that we all. So the idea is that, and actually it's touched on in the first episode with Nassim Haramein, talks about how we're this one energy. We're this one source of energy. All of us, you are, I am, we're the same. And we then come into this individuation stage where we're now in our physical bodies and we don't realize that we're actually still one. We're actually still connected. You are, I am you, you are me. We're still that energy body together. You just now look different from me. That's all. And because we're in a different dimension, we're in a different form. And so we think of ourselves as separate. Because, well, okay, our elbows aren't connected, like our foreheads aren't connected. Like, so we're separate, we're different, we're unique, that word, everybody's unique. So it's the remembering that we actually are one energy source. We are all interconnected to each other. And if we realize that, if that's, it's something I'm still working on, it's like I'm still trying to get so that I can be more compassionate. I can be kinder. It's like I'm looking at me right now, like you're looking at you right now. And we need to remember that and be kinder to one another. And, that's a start, right? And then there's so much more we could do with that. But it's that interconnected, it's that connection that we actually have with and that's what I'm thinking you're thinking of. What do you think? It was something different?
No, that totally makes sense. Interconnectedness is a big thing to me. It seems to be such an obvious dynamic to the reality that we all occupy. So I'm drawn to that concept to begin with. And it seems to be such an obvious one, but to many people it isn't. Many people are tricked by thinking that we are separate from one another and that they're little islands unto themselves and that what they say or do doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things. But I think just the exact opposite. I think everything matters, even if it doesn't manifest into action. Our thoughts, our intentions matter. Even if our intentions aren't portrayed in our actions, they're still there, they're still in the mix, and they still affect reality. So I always complain that I'm not in touch with my intuition, but my girlfriend keeps telling me you just don't understand it. You think that it manifests one way, but really it's always manifesting just in a way that you don't recognize. And that's a relief to me because it stinks to think that you're not in touch with your intuition, this thing that should come very naturally to you. But I think that, again, we can be tricked by that. We can get a feeling about a situation and, for instance, be very trusting to somebody, and they end up screwing us over. So then we could just mark another thing up like, well, my intuition sucked in that situation. But it's not as simple as that. And maybe what you intuited about that person in the beginning wasn't, they betrayed that possibly. There's lots of different aspects to that. So those two, the intersection of interconnection and intuition I found a really fascinating way of viewing both of those things. So I made note of that. So that's where, you basically, that was a really long way of saying, yeah, that's what I was addressing.
I think we need to start with giving ourselves a break, because we do that. And they're good reasons, they're good logical reasons why we might make choices that we do that weren't maybe the best choices, or we weren't following our intuition. And then we need to give ourselves a break. We need to forgive ourselves and go, oh, okay, I'm going to do better next time. What does better mean? It means that I'm going to actually, even if I don't understand it, I'm going to listen to this gnawing feeling. And maybe later on, I might give up an opportunity I think at the moment is good for me. But later on, I'll bet it will be revealed, or I'll bet that if I give this opportunity up, I've got to trust something better is going to come, because my intuition is telling me, don't take it. This is not a good idea. And, there could be all kinds of things. And then just that trust, right? Just, I don't understand this. I'm just going to trust that and just go with it. And it's kind of like that last few steps up a hill where once you peak it, you're like, oh, okay, I can move on now. That's done. I don't know what I was worrying about so much. It's once you make that decision, to trust and to go on. And then when you do, then you're like, okay, I did this once before. I can do this again, and I will do this again. And yeah. And then of course, on the flip side is when we want to trust somebody, right? And our intuition is saying, this probably isn't the best move, but we want to trust them. There's some signs that say that we can trust them. And at the same time, I try to remember that everybody's human, and I'm human. I'm human by allowing myself to trust probably when I shouldn't have. And they're human by making the mistakes and making the choices that they do. And then to just let that go and forgive and go, okay, I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah, exactly.
And just drawing those boundaries. And it doesn't mean you're mean, and it doesn't mean they're wrong. And it doesn't, it just means I need to honor where I am right now and move on. And they need to figure things out. And we will all be better off when we go our separate ways.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. What are some ways that you think that we can strengthen our intuition?
Well, first, right, forgive yourself and give yourself a lot of love and compassion. That's the first thing, is to stop the judgment. Oh my gosh. And let go of guilt, anything you might regret. Because all of that is just super low vibration. That is not helping. That is not serving. I think doing everything we can to let go of the monkey mind, you're going over and over and over conversations probably that we haven't had yet. That's me.
Me too. Me too. Oh my God. I rehearse conversations all the time.
And it's like, I know that when I haven't done that, it's not like it hasn't served me, right? Like if something came up, I knew exactly what to say now because I rehearsed it so many times. But at the same time, guess what? Flip side, if I just come from a place of, they're two different places. When I come from a place of knowing exactly what to say because I've rehearsed it, that's me being defensive. When I come from a place of not rehearsing it at all and coming from an open, accepting, warm-hearted place of just openness, and somebody comes at me, like, rawr, then I'm in a more calm place to say, wow, that really hurt, or that you seem really upset and I don't understand why. And, instead of being defensive and going rah right back, it's more like, because then when your defenses are down, well, then they realize, I guess I don't need to be like this. And then we're all in a better place I think I'm in a better place by not rehearsing, to just really be more in a much more grounded, open-hearted space to just handle whatever comes my way.
Yeah, and that's without pretense too. I mean, if you're open-hearted and open-minded, you're not fearing the possibility of something coming up that you will have to defend yourself from.
Yeah.
And you can meet it for what it is instead of for what you fear that it will be.
Totally. Yeah, because in the end, while you might have come off as the genius as you are, it's like, but was that really helpful? Did it help anybody? Did we get anywhere?
Yeah, exactly. Well, another concept that fascinates me is manifestation. And how does that play with intuition?
Right. So I think some people think, well, that's a psychic ability. That's not intuition. I have a couple of experts who would disagree with that, but it's okay. I mean, we all can. I think that, again, it's an ability that we have that comes under the umbrella of intuition. It's so of manifesting. It's coming from an open heart, from what I learned. That to manifest, there are a number of things that need to be in place, which are very similar to what needs to be in place when you're intuiting. So, open heart, groundedness, no monkey mind, free and clear, completely connecting with the powers that be, and asking and trusting that whatever you're asking for, you can ask for the essence and let the powers that be decide the form, which is what I'm continually told to do. And I try. It's like, yeah, but I want pink. It's like, well, if yellow comes your way,
take it.
Take it, right? But yeah, so it's kind of like, you manifest, and some people can, get really specific and get exactly that. And many of us are just like, well, if I could just get a concept of that, I think I'll be happy. And that's pretty much, I'm told that, and when I do that, I'm like, if I can just get the feeling of it, it's that connection, the vibration, it's really tuning in to the frequency of what I want. What frequency is that? I don't know. I'm just feeling into it and sensing it and trying it on and wearing it. And before I know it, I have that. I have that. I'm living it the way that I want it. And I'm not talking to myself about, oh, you can't do that. Oh, that's not possible. Oh, that's woo-woo. Like all the judgment again. Bye-bye judgment. Bye-bye guilt. Bye-bye all of that stuff that is not helpful. And stay in the vibration of what it is that I'm sensing. And again, it's that sensing. It's the connection to the source, to the higher source. And what do you know? Before you know it, now you've actually manifested something.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like to you, it's more of a spontaneous, organic sort of event, as opposed to when I want to manifest something, I write it on a piece of paper and I stick it into my journal, and then I throw it into the fireplace or whatever. You do it on a sort of a case by case basis.
I do. A lot of times I will write it down. I will journal about it. I'll put it on my meditation table. I'll light a candle and meditate on it. It doesn't matter really, right? What the point is that you're taking it on. You're putting it in. So you're making it happen in your energy field. And from that, you will manifest. And when you say spontaneous, it's like, well, it's not like I just think about it and 5 minutes later I have it. It's like, right? Like sometimes it might take a couple months, but I'm totally focused on it. And when I'm not, like if I allow my focus to go off, depending upon what it is, then it may take a while. It may not even get to me because now I'm just completely not focused on it. Like some things I really need to put a lot of energy behind.
So what are some different types of energy? You talk a lot about that in the various episodes of Superpower, but can you maybe go through some of them and how they can be used or utilized?
Well, are you thinking in terms of like, other than like the different things that we were like telekinesis and precognition and remote viewing and okay, so that's like if you want a remote view, which I had the pleasure of being taught by Joe McMonagle to remote view, and it was amazing. It was, following protocol. His thing is like, look, this isn't anything other than protocol. Follow the protocol and you're there. And which is so much more concrete. It's so much more like, it almost sounds left brain, but you're really not, you're just like, no, there's A, B, and C. And you do that and then you connect. And every time I had proof right there. I drew it. I wrote words. I was like, wow. Yeah.
How long did it take you to learn that?
It was just a weekend class.
Wow.
And but the point is that everybody can do it. He will say that everybody can do it. It's you that gets in the way. So, if you just let go of all the monkey mind stuff and do as he tells you to do. Just follow that. Put all your energy into that. Don't let your mind sway, what am I going to eat tonight? It's more, I am focused, like it's serious focus, serious. And that's how I see a lot of, like, if you want to bend a spoon, that's some serious connection to, however you're taught to bend that spoon. Or precognition. I took the class with Julia Mossbridge, and I'm not that great with precognition. And I'm really good with remote viewing. But, which is funny because people might think, well, aren't they kind of the same? They're not. They're actually very distinctly different. But with that, I would need some practice. Like, I don't think that's quite as natural for me, precognition. Can I do it? Absolutely. Was I doing it sometimes successfully? Sometimes, yeah. But it wasn't consistent. And I would need to practice. Like she says, we need to practice, like cultivate. That's what it means, right? Practice. So if you really want something, guess what? You can do it. And some people need to practice more than others. Some people, it's totally natural too. And others, like OBE, I'm going to need some practice.
But you're starting that process, right?
Oh, yeah. Like really listening to what the experts do, reading about it. Really just, again, I see myself as reading the books, journaling, meditating on it, listening sometimes to the hemisync, the binaural beats to get those, those vibrations, working with my energies, and really putting a lot of focus on that. I know that I'm going to advance more quickly than if I sort of did it sometimes.
Well, that's what I really like about, I was going to say some of the guests, but all of the guests really that you had, that you interviewed and talked to throughout the various episodes. That they weren't just people that were just there to say, hey, yeah, you can do it. I've done it, dude. It's totally possible. But they are people that are studying it and they're researching it and they're collecting data on it and they're in turn teaching people how to do these things. I think that that's fantastic because, as you mentioned a few times in the interview, woo-woo. People tend to lump all of this stuff together in some sort of new age fantasy world about things that, sound nice. They sound like they could be cool things to do, but not like anything that could actually happen. But these things are absolutely things that can happen, and they're repeatable and they're researchable and you talk to a lot of those people, and Dean Radin, it comes to mind. Such great guests that you had. How did you go about picking these people?
It was like casting, right? And it really was. I wanted people who knew exactly what they were talking about, and they'd been out there speaking about it for a long time, or at least enough where they were very, it was such an easy topic where they weren't stumbling over themselves. And so, there were people that I really wanted, but they weren't quite ready. They weren't, ready to just freely go on and on and on and on about it. And that's okay. That's just where they are. And more speaking events will allow them to just get to that point. But I did choose people who have been out there for a long time, have been speaking on it a long time, have been studying it a very long time. And it just was so easy. They could go on and on and on, for days to talk about that. And the passion is still there.
Yeah.
They're so excited about it. And together we got excited as they were interviewing about their lives and what they've dedicated.
Yeah, Jude Curvin. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah.
Yeah, she comes to mind. She's totally she just starts to shimmer when she's talking about these things. You can tell she really feels it deeply. She really feels passionate about it.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I felt like they all did, in their own ways. They just, as soon as we sat down and I asked them questions about what they do, this is what they do. It's what they get paid for. It's what they do. And they just came alive. It was like, oh, let's talk about this and this and this.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And that's very important for people. If you're going to get excited about something, you want people to get excited about it, you need people who are excited about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, to what extent do you think that some of the research into these sorts of things have been censored or suppressed?
Well, they talk about that, right? I mean, Dean talks about it and Julia talks about it. And, almost, gosh, there are a lot of experts, as I just really think about it, bring it up in one way or another. But it's again, it falls back to the materialistic reductionist thinking. And there were a couple of people who said, wow, Danny, that whole bit about the history behind when the church and what they called natural philosophers, they were scientists, and they didn't quite call them scientists in those days, they were philosophers, that the church decided, the Catholic Church decided that the Catholic Church was going to take care of the souls, the spiritual end, and the philosophers were to only take care of what they did, the physical. And from that's where our beliefs came from, that only the physical is what is real, and anything that's invisible is not. And there was good reason, like people were getting killed over it, like they were getting hung, and they were getting, like all kinds of bad things were happening if they dared to flow into the invisible, into the spiritual, into the, those realms. And so, for hundreds of years, it became very clear to me what the consequences were, what the consequences were if we even thought about veering into the non-physical world. And so naturally, this is what we teach in our schools. This is what we do. This is what we do in this culture is, we learn the hard way without even realizing where that came from. Because before that, we actually very powerful souls. And, and then they did away with that. And you're like, okay, so this whole, spiritual thing, you talk to me now because I talk to God. Only I talk to God. Mm-hmm. And so that's how and without even realizing it, without losing that story, or some of us didn't even know there was that story. We just went on with life thinking it's only the material that is. So people still believe that. Oh my gosh, that's what they teach in school, in the universities. Fortunately, there are some brave programs out there, and there have been for decades, right? Princeton and Stanford and Harvard, and they had some. What is it, University of Virginia right now? It has been for decades, studying children, and so they. and the after, or the before life and afterlife. And so they're brave, and they, you know, there's some here and there that do, but mostly it's, you know, I've been laughed at numerous times just by bringing up the film and what I'm doing. And because that's ingrained in them. So I let it go because they don't know any better. And that's the thing. When somebody proudly straightens up in their chair and says, I'm a skeptic. I'm a skeptic. You got to prove it to me. I just go, you know what? That's like not in fashion anymore. Like, you really should stop saying that, because it tells me that you're closed-minded, that you're not open to the possibilities, and that I kind of don't really want to have a conversation with you, because that really limits our conversation.
For sure. Yeah, if it becomes like you're on trial and you have to state your case to this juror, like, come on, that's insane. Let's just have a conversation about it.
Yeah. And when people do that, they don't realize this is just rote. This is what they know. This is all they know. They haven't put any thought behind what they're now saying to, or what they have been saying to people. But, you know, that's the thing. If anybody, I don't take it personally anymore. Like, I don't grow sad or depressed, or, I mean, yeah, there's still that part of me, and it's sad for that person. It's like, gosh, we've got so much more to go. You know, it's like, if that's how they're still reacting, and I remind myself, that's not how everybody reacts. There are a lot of open minds out there and willing to listen and ask questions. And that's the thing. It's like, okay, just step back from that and just ask questions. Like, don't turn people off or turn a conversation off, because guess what? You're not doing yourself any favors by doing that, because you're not going to learn.
Exactly. Have you gotten good feedback?
Oh my God. Oh my God. The emails, people describe standing in front of their television set, watching the computer, and tears streaming down their face as they continue to listen, you know, through this emotion that they're experiencing, because they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel like they're not crazy, they feel like there's actually many of us out there who are just like them. And, you know, on the flip side, I see people still with partners who are angry at them for making a purchase because the stuff is, you know, wrong. And, there are all kinds of reactions, but for the most part, it was just, I would get a number of people saying, hey, I knew a lot of this stuff and I learned some stuff and I just feel seen. I just feel validated. I'm just so glad that I feel like there's more promise in the world because there's this in the world. It's like out there now and nobody can shut it up if we're just going to keep moving forward when there's more of this out there in the world.
Absolutely. It's a good place to collect and reflect and, as you said, get validated and trade stories. And, somebody always, maybe you're familiar with a lot of these subjects, but somebody's always got a different take on it, or they have a sliver of information that you haven't heard of before, or something that you can try out personally. And it just spirals out from there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, how many times have I listened to something and go, okay. Oh, that piece right there, that piece right there, that's what I need to implement.
Exactly.
And then it makes, totally makes a difference.
Something to go back really quickly to when you were talking about skeptics and how it's hard to engage in a conversation with somebody like that. And I think going back to what we were talking about with experts, I think that's an example of where experts take the place of experience. So these people are just listening to what the experts have told them is an acceptable way of viewing reality, and where the lines are that you have to stay between, instead of having pushed those boundaries and pushed those envelopes themselves. They're just going passively accepting somebody else's explanation of what this reality that we're navigating is, instead of having gone exploring it or testing it themselves. What a bunch of fuddy-duddies.
Well, that's the thing. They pride themselves on being something that they think is worthy. They think that it's something to respect and that they're commanding respect when they do it, when really what the message is that they're unthinking. They don't think for themselves. They're just parroting back what they've heard. Because to me, now, skeptic, way back when, used to mean I question.
Yeah.
But now it just means I don't believe until you prove something to me. And it's like, well, all right. I mean, if that's how you want to lead your life, I don't think it's helpful. But I think that they mean for it to be I question, but they're not questioning. They're just saying, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, instead of just saying, question. Here's this. What about this? What about that? It's like, question it. And they don't. They just say, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And without even really knowing what they're saying, it's just, and what I think is kind of almost ironic is that it's like, well, okay. So knowing that you've never read about this and knowing that you've never studied it, never looked into it, and you're saying, well, you're wrong. How do you know I'm wrong?
Exactly.
And the question is, or the answer is, it's a feeling.
Yeah. Prove it. Measure and quantify your feeling. That's funny.
It's just a hunch. It's like, oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Yeah. The pot calling the kettle black.
You had a hunch that intuition is woo-woo.
Yeah, exactly. Think about that. Just go home and think about that, okay? And then get back to me.
Right.
Okay, well, we can start running this around towards the end. But I want to say, you mentioned that there are people that you wanted to talk to and they weren't ready to. So does that mean that there is going to be a second series?
I need people to buy this film so I can do the second series.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Okay.
But I do have, just today, I just got as excited as I was when I first started this film and I thought, I don't even really need to do another series. This can be a part of, the Superpower Series, because it's all the same stuff. So
sure.
Yeah. And I thought, all right, really because this was self-funded and I'm really serious about okay, people, we need you to buy this film so that I can, or just donate, just do something so I can buy I can get the next one going. And I do have some cool ideas and about, I can't really name the person I'm pinpointing right now because they haven't heard about it from me yet, but, that would be weird. Uh-huh. But I do think, wow, I'm just going kind of crazy with my ideas. And I think people would love it based on the feedback that I got and what they really want, what they're really interested in, and what this can provide. Oh my God. I think and it would provide a solution to what's going on in the world.
That sounds very promising.
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing about it.
Tell people to buy my film.
Well, okay, now's the perfect time to bring this up then. Where can people find you, and where can they find where to buy or stream, or describe the different packages that have to do with Superpower?
If they go to watch.superpowerfilm.com, they'll go to the page where there's our latest trailer. We've got several trailers, and they'll see the latest, and then they can just scroll down and look at the 3 different packages, 2, all of which are streaming, and one of which has hard copies as well. And all of them contain the first 10 episodes. And then the next level starts with 2 additional episodes that were not aired, and as well as audio. So those are all streaming, because people, confuse streaming and downloads. It's just streaming. And then the third package, which has the hard copies, has a DVD set of the 1 through 12 episodes, and it has audio on a USB, and then it has 2 big fat USBs filled with the full-length interviews of our experts.
Cool.
Yeah. Like if you want to take a deep dive, get that. It's the rough stuff. It's not anything where we bring in visuals and there's nothing. It's just interview. That's all it is. But it's filled with information.
Any estimate as to how many hours there are on there?
Over 60.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm in.
Yeah. yeah. And I've, to me, the price is like, okay, I need to be charging more for this. But I also know that, let's be realistic with what people actually will choose to afford. So that's why it's at, the price that it's at. So, but it's
wonderful.
Yeah.
Well worth it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned donating too. Can people donate from that page also, or do you have a Patreon page or?
Yeah, actually, if you go to the About page to promote the concept a little bit, and my why, I have 3 quickie videos on there that talk about my why, why I made this film. And there's a little button right in the middle of that page, a donate button, where because some people just want to donate. They don't, they're like, I can't afford the film, but I want to give you something because of all the work you did and to send my appreciation. So I do have a little blurb on there about, like, literally, like, if you wanted me to keep doing this work, I really need you to buy this.
Yeah, sure.
And if you can't afford that, then here's a donate button, and you can donate. So there's always that.
And you mentioned earlier in a previous conversation that you were thinking maybe of streaming all of them again for a limited time. Is that going to happen?
We are tossing around some ideas. We've got different kinds of ways there's the whole concept of evergreen, which we're seriously looking at. But, another live one like the premiere, I'm not sure it's necessary, but we might, the premiere lasted 13 days. I mean, it was like people had hours and hours to watch all 10 episodes. And we might just do it over a weekend. We might, so we're thinking of all kinds of ways. I don't want to promise anything. Like I can't say, oh yeah, next September, or, we're still feeling it out, still figuring it out. But it's possible. And I'm telling people to stay on our guest list so that, when something comes up, like I've got a cool announcement, hopefully happening tomorrow, to our wider audience that's talking about a couple of really cool things that are coming up. Our membership site, for instance, which is Mind's Eye and Crown members, get to have new content added, which it's not already there. I don't, want to mislead people into thinking they're going to go in and have 20 new videos. It's more member-led. So what do you guys want? And we'll go get it. And it's going to be, just slowly. And our first contribution to that is we're building it right now. And so, we'd like to offer something that's new and that's useful for people at least once a month, just to add new content in there somehow.
Cool. Sounds fantastic. Well, Danny, thank you so much for being generous with your time and sitting down to chat about your wonderful docuseries that is highly recommended by me. All of the links that you mentioned will be in the episode notes, so anybody can go there and click, and you will take you right to where you need to go. And hopefully I can steer some people in your direction, because you definitely need to be funded to do more work. They're really, really well done, and tons of great, useful, wonderful information and insights. And I just thank you for doing it. It was really, really wonderful, and I got a lot from it.
Thank you. And I have to add, because you asked me this and I missed this part about, how are people reacting? I have been told by a few sources, not like tens of thousands of people, but a few sources who are in films, who have done films, who are saying that this is the best in its genre out there right now. And I don't necessarily know that I agree with that, because I've seen other films, and I'm not trying to be critical of my stuff, but that's what these pros, I see them as, like, this is what they do. Mm-hmm. I'm like, all right, I'm going to trust that and go with that. And it's because it's taken very serious. It's not taken as woo-woo or isn't this crazy or, wild, or, it's taken very seriously, very respectfully. And it comes from a very straightforward perspective. We're not trying to put a little twist on it. So I think because of that, this genre needs that. And that's what we provide.
Yeah. And you came through with flying colors. Keep up the good work and do more parts, please. And I encourage all of you who are listening to go check it out and either pay for the streaming or get one of the packages, and that will help to sponsor Danny put more of this wonderful stuff out. So thanks, Danny.
Thank you.
It was great.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to speak sometime in the future about more wonderful work that you're putting out.
Cool. I love that.
All right. Take care and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks.
All right. Farewell.
Bye.
If you like what you've heard and would like to contribute to The Melt, there are a few ways that you can do so. The most tangible way would be financially by clicking the Patreon link in the episode notes, and there you will find a multitude of ways that you can help for as little as $1 a month. This helps to keep making The Melt better, pay the bills, and help to make this podcast my full-time job that I can fully devote my time to and give you more content. Another way of helping would be by going to wherever it is that you subscribe to The Melt and give it a favorable review or rating that will help to get it out to more people. And lastly, if neither of those options are readily available, simply send your good thoughts and intentions. In an interconnected and quantumly entangled multiverse, these also go a long way. Thank you.